Hi and welcome back to the channel. I'm 4 years into the restoration of my MGA and at a point now where I'm almost ready to do the final colour and the painting. Look back at the last couple of episodes and you'll see how I got to this point in the painting process. But the car's looking not so bad. Quite pleased in how the 4 coats of high build primer went on. I use this product. It's HB Body Pro P360. Seems to have covered quite well. I use 4 litres of that stuff plus the hardener or the activator to get this on, and now I'm ready to start the prep work to get the body as perfect as I possibly can in my garage before I put the colour on. So obviously I want the smoothest finish that I can get on the body before I start to paint. Obviously it'll lay down better and flatter. The tools I use are, this is probably the thing I use most, which is just a very long block, stiff for sanding block with a 240 grit paper. It's the Mirka product is the one I like best. It's like a mesh, but it lasts for ages, much longer than normal sandpaper would. So that works for me. So always preference is that. I've got a shorter one as well. It's the Mirka brand as well, this one. So that's a nice block to use. I've just bought this. Maybe a bit floppy, not sure yet. But on certain points, where just to get a nice curve, I'm thinking that I'm going to be able to use that. So it's a bit of a trial. We'll see if that's a go. And I've got a small block as well, just to get into those very tight corners. So start with 240. I'm then going to go on to 320, and then I've got a 600, which I'll do like wet and dry, wet sand to get the smoothest finish. So we're off now. Let's start with the 240 on the long block, see how we get on. So I just applied a dry coat, guide coat onto the roof there. It's just you just dab it, rubbing it all over, and the plan is just to take the block and start to work that away, and if it's nice and smooth, or till it's nice and smooth, and you do it basically until all of the guide coat is gone, and I should have a nice finish. Hopefully there's no real dips or grooves or anything in there, and it'll just be nice and smooth and finished, and let's move on to the next panel. Well, that's been about 10 minutes on this section, just covering the whole area with that floppy block, which seems to be working quite well on this surface. And I'm close. I'm getting there. I can see if I can get the shadow away from the. I don't know if I can do that. There we go. You can see there's a few little slight marks still in there, and just generally hold the camera very still. Get a bit closer maybe. You can see the light there. So I'm still not, it's not entirely flat, but I think, you know, a little bit more. Main thing is that I don't, if I can avoid it, get through to the 2-part epoxy prime underneath. I'm hoping that there's enough thickness in this high build prime to be able to lose those. Definitely don't want to get through to any sort of filler work I would have done underneath the 2-part epoxy prime. So hopefully it's all grey when I've finished and nice and smooth. Let's keep going, see how we get on. Oh. Well, blimey, that's a lot of effort. I'm really knackered. But that's taken a long time, but I think I'm there now. That's never been that smooth before, and all the time I have the car, and it's kind of exciting in a very sad way, but it's getting there. But yeah, I think that's it. That's the 240. I think I'm going to be a few days getting the rest of it down to the same level of grip before I move on, but making good progress. Okay, 3 days on and I've flatted the entire car with 240, but look, I've broken through in order to get nice flat surfaces. I have broken through in a number of places as you go around. You can see, you know, some panels are better than the others, but yeah, this is not so bad around the back here. But yeah, I've got the doors, plenty of places where you can see the epoxy prime, and as soon as I got there I stopped because there's no way I want to rub back to get past them onto the bare metal again. It'll take me way back in the process. So it looks like I'm applying 1 or 2, I think, coats of the high build primer over probably just the places where I've got the epoxy primer showing through, or I think I need to, and then start the process again. So that's where I'm at. Let's get spraying. So the second coat of high build primer has gone on really nicely. It's nice and quite smooth actually. I might be getting better at this, I don't know. But there you go. So now I'm going to very carefully knock that back with 240 and get quite quickly probably on the 320, and then start going around the whole car at 320. Okay, I've gone round now with the 240 and the 320. It's come up quite smooth, I think. I've got a few spots, maybe, well, not maybe, I have just little breakthroughs there, so I'm going to just have to repeat the process, which is somewhat annoying, but I've got to do it, I suppose. What I wanted to do, though, was just... the roof is pretty good, and although I may be a little thin, I'm not sure actually in places, it's still got a good covering of the high build primer. So I wanted to try and just do the wet and dry process, so just to see how that comes out, and if the roof goes well, I'll know for the rest of it. You know, not being a professional and all this kind of stuff, I'm just learning as I'm going. I just want to know that I've got a sufficient amount of paint on the car, so when I do the wet and dry on the whole thing, it's going to be good. So the test is the roof. So I got myself a block, a sponge, and some wet and dry 600, and we'll just give that process a go and see how the roof turns out. So on this side of the roof, I did a pass on 600 wet and dry, and I can see, I don't know if I'm being too fussy or not, but I can see some marks in there. So on the other side, I did a wet and dry pass on with 400 grit first, and then went to 600, and it's significantly better, significantly smoother. So that's my test. I think that's what I'm going to do. It didn't take me too long to do the passes, so I'm not concerned at all about the time. I've got time anyway. But that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go 400 wet and dry, then 600 wet and dry, and then I'll be ready for my top coat. That's the plan. So I'm just putting the 600 grit on now. I've gone over this with a 400 dry, and then I very lightly, and then I went 400 wet, and now I'm back on the 600 wet. It seems that I don't have to dwell too much, just keeping it just a fairly smooth and light. Just trying to take all those little scratches out. And that's the plan. I've done the roof seemed to work out okay, and now I'm just working my way around the car. And then once I've done it, I'm covering the panel up with a dust cloth or dust sheet or something, just to stop the dust in the air falling on it. Because I'm kind of finding that stuff goes a bit gritty if you leave it, regardless of what you've done previously. So I thought if I just put something over it, it will help to just reduce that a bit. Otherwise you're just going round and round in circles. There we go. Yeah, look at that. What a difference. Amazing. Probably can't see that on the camera, but that is like super smooth now. Super smooth. That'll do the job. Yes! It's only been 4 months of work and I'm ready now for the top coat. I've just finished flattening my 600 wet, all done. Get the car out, clean up the area, prep for the final spray. Blimey, that was sketchy. I think with fiberglass wings and half the metal missing when I pushed it in there 4 years ago has made a huge difference to the weight. So anyway, it's out. I'm definitely going to need some help to push it back in, but now we're out. I can see properly all around. It's looking really good, you know. I hope I don't mess up the top coat. I really don't, because it's looking great. Right, so I'm going to sweep out and blow everything away, and then the plan is to put some dust sheets down. So I've got plenty of polythene. I'll sort of line the garage a bit, and yes, something that you will probably know, but I found out the hard way, is that flies absolutely love paint as you're putting it on. I've had so many flies plopping on to the paint just as it's wet, and you pick them out with tweezers and you're left with 6 little legs that you can kind of rub out with the primer. With the top coat won't be able to do that. So I've got off the internet, I've got some just some cheap fly screen. Those two, that's enough to cover a garage door, and that cost me less than £10. So hopefully that will do the trick. I've also got myself a blower, which I'll show you later. It's hiding under there somewhere, for when I spray, to help me with some ventilation. So plenty of dust there. Let's get sweeping. New day, very special day, kind of like getting married, having a baby. That can't, maybe not quite that, but close. Car's in. This is the day we spray. So it's all done. I've got as much as I can. I've not a perfect job possibly, but it's quite well covered in polythene. Car's in. Just giving it a little bit of a kind of a washette yesterday. Let it dry out for a bit. Got to jack it up. Got to mask it out, and then a little bit later on this afternoon we're going to go for the big spray. It is a little bit autumnal out there, okay? So it's taken me 4 months, as you know, as I keep saying, longer than I expected, and the moisture content is a bit over 80 today. So I've got to somehow get the heater going without catching everything alight, to warm the place up, to move some of the moisture out. Then I'm going to get my fly net up, seal myself in, and get the job done. So let's prep. Okay, I've had some attempt to put the fly screen up, and there it is. It's a bit Heath Robinson, but I know it works because there were loads of flies on it when I was while I was putting it up. So that's good news. So although I think I may have a fly in here somewhere, so I've got the handy swat. We'll see. I hope there's nothing in here. I really do. So now, okay, I'm just going to do a panel wipe and a tack cloth and mix some paint up and do it. There we go. So I started spraying with the boot and the bonnet up, just to do the inside edges where the bonnet and boot would land. On the doors, I'd sprayed those, the inside of the doors and the door jambs, well, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. You see it in a previous video where I'd done that in advance, and that was nice and easy. Now, I wish I'd thought of that before for the bonnet and the boot, but hey, I got away with it. The boot went, the bonnet went, and the boot went down okay. They're not touching around the edges, and then I proceeded to carry on. So this is a light kind of dust coat that I'd started to apply. Yeah, so that's, I found it quite tricky actually, because it's a very wavy, curvy car, and it's not very straightforward. So having a kind of method to go around and get everything was a little bit tricky. I kind of did a phantom run with the gun before I started, just to, you know, make out I was doing the spray, and as that helped, I think, to allow me to think about how I was going to go about it. But that kind of that all went on okay. I found immediately that the gun was spraying a lot faster and a lot heavier than when I was putting the epoxy primer on and the high build primer. So I was was a little bit nervous about that. I was moving fairly fast. All I wanted to do at this point is get a cover. This is quite satisfying, just running along the side of the car and just getting that very light coat on. I say I'm moving, I think, quite fast there, just to make sure I don't go too heavy, and that kind of giving me a tack coat for the second coat. The idea being obviously that if you put something a little bit heavier on, then it will stick to the tacky first coat. So I just worked my way around methodically and got that on, and that kind of worked okay. At that point I was really fairly happy. Now the thing is here that the temperature, blasted the heaters on before I started, and that I'd got that up to a reasonable temperature, and the humidity I'd got that down to about 60. But in all of the, not excitement, but it is quite intense, I found this process. I didn't, and the fact that I had the garage door open as well with the fly screen on, so I couldn't close the doors. I didn't put the heater on halfway through to get the humidity down, and I think that cost me. Well, it definitely did cost me later, because as you just seen, that the humidity has gone up significantly, and the temperature had dropped down. My plan was to put 3 coats on over the whole car, and this is the second coat going on now. And I was finding that it seemed to be, as I said, going on fast and heavy, but didn't flow very well. So I was kind of a bit confused. I tried adjusting the gun a bit off camera just to see if I could kind of slow it down, but it was the front was going on okay, but as I worked towards the back of the car, I thought, well, I've got a problem here. I just wasn't working quite as nicely or going on quite as nicely as I wanted to. But I pressed on, I finished the second coat, and then towards the back of the car, it just in that back corner where I am now just wasn't right, and I did get a fairly significant run there, and I thought, oh gosh. So I went back. I thought, well, I don't want to progress any further over a run because I'll just make it worse. But I did end up getting 3 coats, and they laid down really quite nicely on the roof, on the front wings, bonnet, valance, etc. So I got 3 at the end of the day. I got 3 coats on the front, and I'd paused at the back where I'd started to get some runs, and just to think about what was going on. And then I, sort of kind of overnight realised what my issues were. 2 days later, and this is the final result. Shiny, shiny, shiny. How about that? I'm generally very pleased. I guess I am very pleased. I'm about 80% pleased. When I'd finished, I was about 40, but I thought about it overnight, and the majority of the car has come out really well. I've got a pretty decent shine on it. There's a few bits of dust that I'm sure I can polish out, but generally I'm pleased. As an amateur sprayer, it was quite a stressful experience, but it's come out okay until you kind of get to the back, and then we got a problem. So here we go. I've got some key learnings, I think, definitely from this. So what do I think I'd do different next time? Well, I think the first thing would be that I've had problems with the back of the car, which has been nearest the door, and it took longer than I thought it would, this whole 4 months of preparation work, and I'm into the autumn. So I definitely want to be able to control the environment a lot better. The fact that I had the door open, it sorted the flies out, didn't get a single fly on the car, which was great. But I really, by the garage door is definitely colder, and the temperature and the humidity has definitely linked to the tack-off time of the paint, whereas the manufacturer guidance says tack-off between coats is between 5 and 15 minutes, but it says at 20 degrees, and clearly as I've gone on through the process, I'm way short of 20 degrees. And when I googled the impacts of humidity on 2K paints, it says straight away that it can lead to problems with slippage and drips through adhesion or curing time of the paint itself. So that's number one. I'd sort the heating out. I get rid of the blower, the gas blower. So I can have heating I can have all the time. I don't think I said that I had an oil heater at the front of the car here, which helped to keep the front part of the garage, this back part of the garage, warmer. And I think if I'd had additional electric or heaters that I could have on all the time and not be concerned about the fire risk with spraying in that environment, that would definitely help. And I'd close although I had a blower to circulate the air, I was circulating out warm air and letting humid air in. So I'd need to address that somehow, do something different with the garage door and the fly net, etc. So that would be the first thing. Second thing would be light. So because I put the polythene up, it's been helpful to reduce the amount of dust in the air, but it definitely has cut the light down a lot in here to start with, and I didn't really appreciate it by how much. So if I had lights around, additional lighting around the workshop, that would have been very, very helpful. And maybe I see a lot of on YouTube of professional sprayers with a light on the gun, and definitely to be able to see what, particularly with your second and third coats, to see what you're laying down and how it's going would be a, you know, it's an obvious thing I guess in reflection, but you know, that's learning. I would definitely do that next time. And the third thing is practice. So paint's expensive. You think I thought then I'd be fine, but if I'd had a practice panel or just a sheet of steel that I could go through the whole process, the epoxy prime, then the high build primer, and then the top coat, treating the panel in the same way as I would do the car, I could have run that first and I would have had a much better idea of how things were going to behave. You know, I said about the amount of volume of product I was getting out the gun, I wasn't comfortable with throughout the whole of the spray, but mid-spray to try and change things, not a great idea. So if I could practice first, get the gun set up how I was comfortable, that would have been, you know, a much smarter thing. And also, given that I've got possibly different temperatures in the room, to have a number of practice pieces where I could physically check the tackiness of the paint. But consider what the data sheet says from the paint manufacturer, but to check in your environment at your you know, temperatures and humidity when it's tacky and ready for the next coat. Now is an obvious thing that I would definitely do next time. So that's my thoughts anyway. I mean, many of you out there have got much more experience on painting, and I would really, really appreciate your comments on, you know, things I should have done. Please be constructive, because I feel a bit fragile at the moment. But, you know, I'd really appreciate your comments. That would be great. Yeah, any other comments as well on removal of the drips. I'm going to leave this now for probably 3 weeks to a month to let this really harden off before I start to address those things. But then I'm going to have to get on and see what I can do to finesse the areas that aren't quite perfect, and get those into the same state before I start buffing and polishing. So I hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, please like, and if you haven't subscribed, I'd really appreciate that. Would be great. And see you next time. Cheers, bye.